Today we're looking at application security. I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and we are joined by a guest, Ernesto DiGiambattista from CYBRIC, founder and CEO. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for inviting me.
So application security is kind of a broad topic, obviously, and the way we think about things here at Solutions Review is when a solution goes from a nice to have to a have to have, it becomes interesting to us. And really, over the last few years, application security and a broader sense for that in the enterprise has really become a have to have. How did you become, you're the founder, how did you become interested in building a new solution around this sort of thing?
So I think, coming from my prior life as a practitioner, I just kept on looking at the overall landscape and the problems that I was faced with, and the playbook was always the same. Go out, buy a tool, hire a person to solve the problem. But in actuality, what I was really doing was kind of fooling myself, and the real common questions that I always got asked at a board level were three things. One, how secure are we? Two, how quickly can we find problems? And three, how quickly can we fix them? And when I started looking at my overall strategy, what I realized was there was no one solution in the market that could do that. So when I looked and thought about what I wanted to build, it was pretty evident to me, instead of taking a siloed approach, but actually taking a platform view and figuring out how can I come back and answer those questions. And it comes down to two critical factors. The first is providing this level of assurance, and the second piece is visibility. And that's kind of how I looked at CYBRIC as a whole, and looking at it from rather a vertical approach, such as static code or open source, but taking more of a horizontal approach into the application lifecycle.
Well, and really, it's an arms race these days on the client side, and you represent a new weapon in that arsenal. But what are they faced with? I mean, what is the threat that we all hear about all the time that an enterprise, particularly an enterprise that's building a lot of different applications, faced with?
So I think transformation in two factors, I think, is what we're seeing on the customer side. The first is cloud transformation, and the second is this movement towards DevOps. And there's obviously significant benefits to both, but when CIOs and CISOs are sitting back and looking at their overall strategy, the fear is the unknown. They don't know how quickly they're pushing code out. They don't know how quickly applications may be transforming to the cloud. So how do they get that level of assurance and visibility of what's going on in their environment? And that's kind of where we come in. We provide this real-time connection into their entire software development and application lifecycle to give them this level of assurance. And then we basically solve that problem of the unknown. So bad things are going to happen, but detecting them before they become an issue and earlier in the life cycle. That's the whole notion of shifting left. Rather than finding out during a breach, finding out that something may have gotten checked in that had a vulnerability, and detecting it and fixing it and notifying the developer earlier and faster is really the right way of doing it.
Well, so in the past, a large organization maybe to just overpower that threat with human beings, right? But with the lack of talent or the lack of qualified applicants to fill all these open recs that exist these days, it really requires now a sense of automation, some sort of solution to overcome that lack of available employees.
Yeah, I think we've seen, we're faced with negative unemployment in technology as an industry as a whole. And this isn't a new problem. We've seen this in the financial services, we've seen it in healthcare. And rather than being afraid, we should embrace technology from an orchestration and automation perspective. So some of the remedial work can be done now with technology, such as the provisioning, the administration, and management of some of these tools in the marketplace today. Rather than having someone sit behind the desk and downloading and updating and going through these traditional processes, taking a platform approach and enabling organizations to do it continuously is a huge factor.
And so where does CYBRIC sit within a well-established enterprise's suite of solutions in the application security arena?
So we actually touch every single element from the time of code commit to build to run. Organizations can start anywhere in between. The real value is we also, from a cultural perspective, do not impact the organization. Essentially, we basically provide a frictionless process. So every single time a developer is running a line of code, it essentially looks like you just hired 1,000 people that are looking at their application, their code throughout the entire life cycle and providing real-time notification back. So the friction is kind of been eliminated from that perspective. And you used the word velocity earlier. To me, velocity is measured on two factors, quality and speed. You now have both. So every single time a developer is doing something, it's immediately being checked and providing notification back. So I think that's one of the critical components of really seeing large enterprises embracing us, is because you can go into a passive mode and at the same time provide that feedback in real time.
So who within an organization do you engage with in a sales cycle? How do they think about, at what level in the organization are they thinking about CYBRIC?
So we usually start off with the CIO and the CISO. The reason for it is they're the ones that are responsible at the end of the day at the executive level, not so much from a compliance perspective, but understanding and knowing and having command and control of their environment. So this concept of assurance and visibility. They want to make sure if it's cloud transformation, if it's DevOps, even if it's waterfall, if they're still using today, whatever is defined in their security strategy is being executed. The biggest fear is, you hire someone to run these processes and they go on vacation and then there's a gap. Or there's a new application that got spun up and it's put into a cloud environment and you weren't aware of it. So now, because we always have these connections and we're seeing their applications and where they are, they now have this level of visibility. As we kind of take it deeper, you start off with the CIO, then the CISO, then we engage. The question is it more appropriate to talk to the security team, talk about their overall strategy, or is it about the application and DevOps side, about bringing DevSecOps into the whole process? So it kind of takes two factor there.
So is there a resistance to this? I mean, where do you find resistance? Just to think about objections and so forth.
It's interesting. We used to get some resistance from the pen testing team because they would think we're eliminating their job. But in actuality, what we've done as part of our platform through a customer request is taking their data. That's extremely important. The human element is so important to the whole process that you can now ingest that and visualize it for them as well from an enterprise perspective. So it's actually giving them this level of scale for the first time.
Well, and that makes sense to me anyway, given the fact that the explosion of data that's happening right now is going to overwhelm effectively any kind of manual processes or any kind of...
Yeah, so I think that's actually a really good point. Because of all this data, you may all of a sudden have a ton of false positive or what we call repeatable issues. So the last thing you want to see is a report that's pointing to one application that has 100 issues, of which 50 of them are all the same. So what we've done as part of our platform is taking this notion of what we would call deduping and correlation. I know we've heard the term machine learning, but essentially taking that and bringing it together and isolating it down and creating a compact view for the developer or the security team to have that understanding of what they actually need to do. That's a big piece. As you're saying, a lot of data, you have to understand what it actually means.
So where do you feel you are kind of in the you're obviously a new company and you've just founded this solution based upon your own experiences. Yep. Where do you feel you are in kind of the adoption curve? I mean, you're obviously early, but are you getting a sense that people don't even recognize this as a problem yet, or are they seeing it and saying, I'm glad you're here?
Yeah, that's actually, we were just having this conversation the other day. I would have said 3 years ago when we first embarked on this journey, it was very visionary. And then last year, as we came to market, the notion of aspirational. And I would say the last 2 to 3 months, we've seen a flip to emerging. We're seeing organizations now who've really moved forward with cloud transformation and DevOps, and security has to be addressed at this point.
Now, is there a profile of company, not necessarily vertical, but the characteristics of an enterprise that you find appealing, that you think you might have a better story to tell?
So I think what we're seeing is, in that perspective, is technology organizations, financial services, and healthcare. The reason for it is, one, they all have regulatory requirements. The tech industry is selling to these industries already. So, it's what we think about in my prior life is this notion of transfer of liability. If we're doing work, if a company's doing work for a regulated industry, there's that transfer of liability, making sure that their code, their applications, they're following best practices. With CYBRIC, we now can provide them an independent review and letting them know that they're doing all the right things as well.
Well, this is incredibly interesting. It's certainly a category that we have been covering peripherally with regard to our DevOps site and certainly in cybersecurity as well. I mean, the threats are incredible, and the enterprises are, like I said, in kind of an arms race right now to battle back against everything that's coming at them. Thanks very much for being here. We very much appreciate it. We would certainly encourage you to go to cybric.com and check out everything that Ernesto's company is doing. It's really cutting edge and very interesting. And also, by all means, go into Solutions Review and check out all the sites that we have covering these types of categories. Thanks very much.
Thank you.